I'm excited to get to share Courtney Joyner's career pathway with you all today. Courtney is an MHS alum, just like all the other interviews we've been doing. And she was in my marketing and econ classes, I remember for sure. You probably know one of her siblings. She comes from a big family, a very creative family. And so if you wouldn't mind, Courtney, I would just love to start with you sharing a little bit about your high school experience at Marion High School.
Yeah. So now that I'm thinking about it, I did a lot in high school. I was involved in dance. I played soccer. I did FBLA. I think I was the president of our region in FBLA.
For a southern area, yes.
Yeah. And I did a bunch of other like leadership positions within that. Competed. I did Tri-High Y and student council. What else? I don't know if I'm missing something, but there was a lot in there. And I had a lot of fun. I think just being involved in all those clubs was probably the best part of being at Marion. And now am I realizing how useful it actually was. It wasn't just a social thing, but it turned out to be really great for me in college and even into my career.
Well, that's awesome. And now what year did you graduate, Courtney?
2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like a blink of an eye. For me, everyone, once they leave here, they're a freshman in college for the rest of their lives. And then like I run into people and I'm like, oh, wow, she's married, or, oh, wow, he has a family, or, like, yeah, they graduated 12 years ago, oh, okay. No, I thought you were still a freshman in college, So this has been really great to catch up with everybody. So in the last 5 years, would you mind to share kind of what your journey has been after you graduated to where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. It has been quite the convoluted path. I will tell you, I'm a big planner and I always go in thinking like it's going to turn out this way. And I've taken a lot of twists and turns. So right out of Marion, I went to Hofstra University in New York, and it's just small, like Jewish university. And I did my freshman year there. And then after that, I decided that I wanted a little bit of a different scene. And so I transferred to the University of Texas at Austin. And that's kind of where I found my home. I really loved the school. It was just a perfect fit for me. And I studied journalism and government. So that's two different majors. And while I was there, I did a lot of internships. I worked on campus at the newspaper. I was a research assistant for one of my professors who was working on his PhD. So quite a different journey along the way. I did some work in news media because I went in thinking that I wanted to do broadcast journalism, like I wanted to do commentary on politics on the news, and I came out wanting to go to law school. So did a totally different direction change. But while I think the reason I came to that was because I did a lot of different internships while I was in school. So I worked on the newspaper, like I mentioned, but I also worked at policy think tanks. I did one local in Texas, and then another internship in D.C. with a think tank. And then I did some research, and all of that kind of helped me find the path that I'm on now. And then currently I am working as a consultant at Guidehouse. So still not in law school, but that's the eventual career move. I just wanted to take some time before I go.
Sure. Sometimes those gaps are refreshing and rejuvenating, or just kind of help you fine tune your direction. So yeah, and you're working, so that's good. You're still getting experience. So for my students that might not know what a think tank is, you mentioned doing some internships at think tanks. What is a think tank?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. I think a lot of people are confused by that name. So basically, we have public policy, which is what our politicians pass, and which ends up affecting us in some way, whether it be your taxes or if you need a license to cut hair. And so what a think tank is, it's a non-profit usually. So they do this research, they compile data, they put out like news releases. There's a lot of different aspects to a think tank. But ultimately what their goal is to push forward certain legislation. So the one that I worked for was an economic, they focus a lot on economic issues. I know, you'd be so happy. I learned so much there, and I recalled so much from your classes.
Oh, good.
So we worked on free market policies is what we push forward. Yeah.
You can see my little sign back here, but it says free market, free people.
There we go. Exactly. And while I was there, like I got to meet our Laffer, who he was Reagan's, one of his chief economic officers. So really what you're doing is you're just doing research on public policy, figuring out, okay, what does it mean for people when we have to make certain occupations have licenses, and how does that affect their revenue, their livelihood, and do we really need that as a policy? Or do we need to have certain property taxes? Can we make Texas, for example, like a broad-based sales tax? And I mean, it goes on, the issues, but basically we compile that information for state senators and representatives to push forward in the Texas Capitol.
Gotcha. Very exciting. Very, very exciting. And I'm sure that it can look really different depending upon what project you're on, what topic you're doing research and reporting on. So that could be really, really neat.
Oh yeah, it was really interesting. And I think one of my favorite things about that experience was, even though I was working on one subject matter, everyone that was there that was an expert was so willing to talk. And so I would just go up to their office and ask questions. And I think that's when I learned the most, is just being like, hey, I don't really understand this, do you want to talk to me about it?
That's awesome. So you're currently in DC.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, right now we all are sheltering in place, but you work out of DC. And what is a typical day like, minus the global pandemic? Like, what would you normally do on the day to day or week to week?
Yeah, so I have yet to really experience a typical day because I started in March. So I have been full remote.
Wow.
Really looking forward to the day when I get to meet my coworkers. But from what I can gather since I've started, a lot of it, as my position as a strategic communications consultant, I do a lot of coordinating meetings for our clients and taking notes and compiling them into like a nice publishable product that will go up online. I believe people could like request them through FOIA. So I think that's part of why, you take so meticulous attention to the quality. But also like people, our clients, they refer back to these notes often. And then just provide like general support for our clients. So in my case, that would be FEMA. And then underneath FEMA, there's FIMA, which is the Federal Insurance Management Agency. Lots of acronyms.
Yes.
Lots of acronyms. So that's who I work with. And we help plan some of their major events, provide logistics, and just kind of like serve as a support for them. A lot of just solution finding. I don't know if that makes any sense or if there's any more.
So you really help your clients fine tune their message, the message that they want presented, I would assume, and then you help them polish it so that it's presentable, really. I mean, they may come to you with like a thought or something that they want expressed, but they may not have the skill set to present it in the way that's going to be the best. So you kind of help them with that?
Yeah, to some extent. We're a little limited on our ability to do that because we're working with the federal government.
Gotcha.
And so we, like, I do a lot of editing and documents and just making sure that it is, easy to understand and concise, and even some like graphics editing in their guides that they send out for their big conferences. I've been working on some of those lately. But I would say even more than that, we help make sure that the pipeline of all of their communication projects that they're working on are getting to where they need to go. So because FEMA is a federal agency, there's a lot of bureaucracy along the way. Like, they have so many checkpoints and so many people that need to review it before it can actually be published. And so we help make sure that there is a streamlined process for them to track all of their communications, and really just following up when maybe something's fall through the crack, or figuring out how can we make this easier for people to use. Can we make sure that certain communication projects are making it through the process faster. And so we provide like a lot of material, like just Excel sheets of tracking and following up with people. So it's kind of a niche.
Yeah, it sounds like it really is. So, as far as the skill sets you use, I'm sure obviously communication is a big one, but what are some of the other skills that you think, or you can expand more on communication even, what are the skills that you think help someone advance or stand out in this profession?
Yeah. I would say that having an attention to detail is one of the biggest things that I have learned and that my managers have kind of expressed to me. They want to make sure that you are performing each task and that they don't have to go over and edit it over and over again, or that it's not just like, okay, well, you made your first draft, but you just handed in like a half-baked product to me. So that is one of the biggest ones. And then really just building relationships has been something that they've emphasized since I've started, and making sure that you are always ready to help out with other tasks. I know in consulting, you're doing your job for your client, but there's a whole nother side of it, which is business development. And they want to see that you are showing up and you're figuring out, how can I help in these other ways that are not just my client specific? How can I go above and beyond?
So, so yeah, networking continues to come up as I've been talking to different alumni as so important. It's just, and some of that is natural for some people, and other people have to really kind of develop those skills and get themselves to the point that they're comfortable, talking to strangers, or, making small talk, or following up those follow-up conversations. So sounds like that's definitely important with what you're
Oh
doing.
yeah, definitely. And I guess like a tip that I could give some people, if you find it hard to like track those relationships, something that I found useful is creating an Excel doc of everyone that I've kind of met and have come in contact with, and writing their information down, whether it be their email, their phone number, what the primary form of communication that you've had with them, and then some notes in case there are some, and then the date that you last contacted them. And I find it useful, not because I don't want it to be like not a personable thing where it's like, oh, let me just check off this box, but I mean, you really do come in contact with a lot of people, and it is really important to make sure you're keeping up with these relationships. And so I just reference it and I say, oh, it's been a while since I've, reached out to Jim. I know he really likes to play tennis. Like, why don't I ask how tennis during Corona is going for him, and that really makes it a lot less stressful.
That's a great idea. I mean, I'm hearing organization out of all that, but also it's, just a way to kind of refresh your memory. when you are coming in contact with so many people, I feel like, especially in any business setting, communication is so important. But like you said, you're trying to continue to have good relationship with your clients and then build new relationships. So that's so important. I think that's a great idea. um, Wonderful. So as far as advice that you would have, I like the piece you just shared, but advice you would have for students in general, juniors and seniors in high school particularly, or who I usually deal with, what are those things that you wish you would have known as a junior or senior at Marion High School that you think would be beneficial?
Yeah, I think I wish that I would have taken some of my involvement a little bit more seriously. um, I tend to be the person that likes to check off a lot of boxes, and I like to do it really fast. And I realize that that doesn't necessarily equate quality. And sometimes I miss opportunities for growth and to learn because I just kind of rush through things. And so that's something that I've had to course correct a lot since I left high school, and even now that I'm in the professional world. So I think when you're in high school, there's a lot of emphasis on like, well, if you wanted to get into a good college, then you need to get good grades, you need to be really involved and have this awesome resume, and you need to do sports, and you need to have a great ACT score, and you have to have these letters of recommendation, and the list can feel really overwhelming. And I think that sometimes you're like, well, I'm just going to check off these boxes with no regard to like how you do it, if it's elegant or not. And I would say slow down a little bit, because it's going to be okay, and try to do what you're doing well and not just check off the boxes. And that's going to pay off so much more in the long run. Even in your classes, like there were some technical skills that I probably slept through during class. And now I'm like, man, if I had paid attention, I wouldn't be taking this online class right now.
So substance over the surface appearance of things is important.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, you're going to be able to write things down on your resume. Like you're going to be able to attest to how much you achieved in high school at the end of the day. So don't necessarily stress out about that. Just focus on getting as much out of it as you can.
Well, and if you focus on the quality of what you're doing, then you have good stories to tell in interviews, or you have good examples, of skill sets that you've learned. You know, we always tell people, for instance, in FBLA, like, yeah, you can join FBLA and you can do as much or as little as you want. And that directly correlates to what you get back out of it. Like if you are the kid that just wants to come to the social events, we're going to welcome you with open arms, and that's great. But there are chances there to develop leadership skills. There are chances to develop communication skills. There are opportunities to be in charge of community service projects and things like that will translate into those transferable skills that you can use.
Yeah, totally. And I think at the end of the day, it's just having pride in your work and wanting it to be a quality product. And people are going to really speak to that, especially if once you get out there and you start interviewing for internships or a job, and you have your references, people are going to remember that you had quality work and that you really paid attention to what you were doing. And that's going to make you miles above anyone else.
I couldn't agree more. And I'd like for a minute just to talk about, you mentioned that you're talking about law school. So that kind of that mindset to continue learning, how do you see your career path going if you go to law school? Kind of where would you like to direct you next?
Yeah. So actually, just kind of touching on the learning, a lot of the reason I decided not to go right out of undergraduate and to take the job that I have now in consulting is because I felt like I needed more professional development before I took that next step. And I know that consulting, they really invest in their employees. They have a lot of learning and development programs, and it tends to be one of the jobs that people want to invest in you, and they want to help you. They want to train you. So that was kind of my underlying motivation before going to law school, because I know that in law school, there's a big emphasis on performing really well. Basically, you don't get a job unless you're top of your class, and it gets harder the further down you get. And so I kind of evaluated myself, and I decided that having that professional experience is going to pay off more than if I had just gone straight in. And maybe the few extra years that I get after law school aren't like, does it really pay off if I didn't do that well? But ultimately, I would like to do constitutional law. That's kind of where my interest is. Yeah, so not super related, but I really enjoy the Constitution. I like learning about it, and I just think there's a need for defending the Constitution. But I'm getting more into the business development within my company, and maybe I'll consider getting a JD MBA and pairing the business side, because I do see an interest in business growing as I get more involved in my company. So
that's really exciting. And another theme that I see as I talk to alumni is you don't have to worry about, like, as an 18-year-old, exactly where you're going to end up. If you're pursuing what you love, it works itself out, or kind of those things that you really enjoy or interested in come to the surface. Because I feel like if I would have been sitting and talking to Courtney Joyner, we took some drives together to Springfield for FBLA, and we spent time together in class. I don't think she would have said at 17 or 18, I want to be a constitutional law attorney. Like,
wow.
You know what I mean? But it's something that has developed over time. And I think that's really neat to see. You were always a very good communicator, and I feel like that is still in play, but it's neat to see how that has been fine-tuned to the direction that you're headed now.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I agree with you. That's definitely been something that I've noticed within myself, is just a change in interest and growth. And I think I realized when I was in journalism, as much as I love writing, I found that law would be more challenging. I was really interested in learning how lawyers think, and I still am. And that's kind of my initial motivation is, yeah, I could be a journalist and I could probably be like decent at it, and make that a career for myself. But I really just want to feel more challenged, and I want to learn more.
And and definitely those writing skills are going to pay off.
Yeah,
For sure.
definitely.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I really appreciate you taking time to do this with us today. I can't thank you enough. I say us like my room is full of people, but it's really just me right now. But I'm going to share this with my students. So I know that they'll benefit from hearing about your journey. And this is definitely an area that I haven't talked to anyone about yet. So this will be a new thing for them to learn about, I think. So I really can't thank you enough.
Of course, I'm happy to help. And if you have any students that are like, that sounds interesting to me, I'd love to talk to her about consulting or law school, or I guess anything that I talked about, then feel free to send them my email or connect them with me on LinkedIn, or my number, just whatever.
Awesome.
I'm happy to talk to anyone.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Of course.